Hi everyone, welcome to the Ministry Down Under webcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Karen Stuckey, and next to me I have Chris Dawes.
Hi Karen.
How you going, Chris?
I'm doing good today actually, so
That's good. I'm excited about today. Do you want to introduce today's guest?
Oh, we have someone I've wanted to talk to you for a while. We've got Geoff Bradley here from McCrindle. Hi Geoff.
Yay!
Chris and Karen, thanks for having me today.
You're welcome. We are so excited. We've been dreaming of this day for so long.
Okay.
We're here in great and interesting times as a social researcher. These are very interesting days. Some challenges, no doubt, but also plenty of opportunity.
Yeah, you're so right. Yeah, so you're from McCrindle, and not many people would know who are watching in the, I suppose, who aren't Christians, but many Christians would have come across your name through social media and other media outlets. Can you tell us a bit about McCrindle Research?
Yeah, we've been around for nearly 15 years and doing research, collecting and analysing data, but we love visualising it. So Mark McCrindle many years ago did a TED talk on bringing data to life, and so that's one of the real passions of our business. And about 15 people in the company, and we work really hard to, I guess, help advise organisations who really want to know the trends, but also respond to them. So we're really there to guide the journey, discover the insights, and help tell the story. And the world, and Australia particularly, is such an interesting place in times such as these. And we know there's many people who are wanting to get the latest information to make the right decision and to make it with confidence. And that's pretty hard in these complex times. There's plenty of nerves and anxiety in people. But hopefully as we chat today, we'll look forward to sharing plenty of stats and trends and a few stories and give people some ideas of how to go forwards.
Yeah, that's sounds great. And tell us how you got to work at McCrindle, because that's an interesting story.
Yeah, I've been here nearly 5 years at McCrindle. So my title is Lead Solution Designer, and I started 5 years ago just as a research executive in there running projects, and got to start working with organisations like Bible Society Australia and National Schools Chaplaincy Association. So we were doing a few research projects in that sort of for Christian companies or organisations, and I'd had a background working in schools and in churches as a youth pastor, and loved working with young people, with families, loved understanding how the culture we live in actually shapes our journey, our spirituality, our faith. And to be able to then work in an organisation that was collecting those trends, I love learning, and so it was a real great opportunity I leapt at to work at McCrindle. And yeah, been here for 5 years, and we've got a great team, great culture, some great fantastic leaders. Mark McCrindle's a wonderful, honest and hard-working guy, but he is a world-class speaker. So it's been great to learn off him and really, I guess, have an opportunity to share some of the trends that we collect. And we probably get a little bit excited about opening Excel files and ABS. Statistics website gets a lot of clicks from me. We love getting into data, maybe a little bit more than we should, but it's a lot of fun and really interesting to see the numbers from the, I guess, how we're living.
Oh, that would be a great job. I'm envious.
That's it. Getting into the data, that's what I like.
Yeah.
And it's a big data world, isn't it? We're all collecting data, whether it's I've got sort of the wearable technology for health data. We want to track our financial data. We want to track our social media usage, not spend too much screen time. I know there's probably plenty of discussion at the moment about people getting a bit overwhelmed and sucked into the online sort of vortex. But we're all collecting data, and so much data we don't know that we're collecting as well, that dark data. And we really want to help people know what data they might have at their fingertips. There's a lot of internal data that people have. For Christian leaders particularly, there's a lot of external data that people can gather, whether it's from McCrindle's work. We do a lot of studies that can help understand the context, but then you've got the Australian Bureau of Statistics, you've got the National Church Life Survey, NCLS Research, they do some fantastic work. So there's a lot of data sets out there that we want to use when we're kind of helping people understand the times. Yeah,
no, that's fantastic. And COVID-19 has hit us all in Australia. And particularly, it's affected us in emotional, mentally, and some with losing their jobs. How have you found that COVID-19's affected Australians?
The impact's been built by all, I think, and to different levels. Whether people live at home on their own, it's going to have a different impact, or if people are, almost 1 in 2 Australians does live in a family household. So people are spending more time with their loved ones if they've been isolated together. However, some are in those more single dwelling households where they're possibly experiencing loneliness. Although I think there are a few book lovers out there who've been very happy to have time on their own. The introverts have been thinking, this is what I've been dreaming of. But when it comes to economic and job market, this has been a real challenge where we've seen Australians, particularly in the arts, in the tourism, in the recreation, entertainment, cafes, restaurants, people have lost jobs as that suppression mandate came through from the government to lockdown. While we could still go out for a walk, and I think bike sales have been up from what I've seen in my neighbourhood. There's a lot of people active, but it has been a real challenge economically. And I think in Australia we can be thankful as well that our government has led with some very enormous stimulus packages to help people who've been feeling anxious. We did a survey just at the end of March when the phases of lockdown were increasing, and one of the top responses was that people were feeling anxious, they were feeling frustrated, probably trying to get that latest communication. And we were back in late March, early April, watching those evening announcements where people were ramping up day by day. That Prime Minister Scott Morrison was really quite fascinating at that time. And we were also feeling quite vulnerable at that time. That was the third top response, where that was emotionally feeling quite vulnerable, even financially. People in Australia are loaded up with debt, and so challenging time if you're looking at several months without a job. Before that package stimulus was announced, people were uncertain how are they going to manage, let alone we've talked the emotions, we've talked the finance, let alone we're actually in a global health pandemic. That's what the issue is over there. So in Australia, we have an ageing population, and so we have a vulnerable community. And so the lockdown was essential. Sadly, we have now passed 100 deaths in Australia. So we're not just talking individuals who've lost their life, we're talking communities that have been impacted, the aged care industry who've been under enormous pressure to manage and lead through this period. Some real challenges for a lot of Christian leaders in this time.
Exactly right. And what type of research are you doing in regards to COVID-19 at the moment?
We've done a survey of 1,000 Australians, and so we asked a range of questions, and we've got a report available that people can access. Happy to share the link to that. It's available at analyseaustralia.com.au, and people can grab that report, and in it we look at how do people feel, so those emotions that they're anxious, uncertain and vulnerable. We looked at things like what are the leadership qualities that Australians want, and people wanted someone who was open and honest. We want leaders who are strong. So the results were really, I think, quite helpful, and I think probably to our Prime Minister's credit, to our premiers, to our health leaders, they've been open with the facts. They've been sharing day-by-day updates. And so the latest research, I think, was a real insight, not just for our political leaders, but our community leaders, our ministry leaders, on how to lead at this time. It's a pretty unknown, uncharted. We've used the phrase unprecedented. That might be one of the words of the year for 2020.
Yeah.
And so helping, I think, ministry leaders know that it is okay to have questions and it is okay to still lead with strength, but be open about the things that you might not know. And the journey that we're on as we recover now from COVID, it's really important for people in these phases of recovery to know that, I just can share what we're thinking, what we're being open about. That's what people are looking for. They're looking for those facts, for leaders to be open with those facts. So this new research was a sample of 1,000 people, really to explore what are people thinking, feeling, what's their behavioural trends, and what's their outlook as well. How long do people think this was going to last? And so a lot of the respondents came in around that 4 to 6 months window was how long they thought COVID would impact them. And here we are in late May now, and it's been a challenge these last few months since late March when the introductions of the restrictions landed. But here we are, a couple of months on. We've still got a long way to go, though, by the sounds of it.
Yeah. So with a sample size of like 1,000 people, is that like a normal sample size, or is that...
Great question.
Talk around that a little bit. Yeah, that'd be good to know.
When we're doing research, one of the things that's really important is you want to make sure that you're collecting robust data. That if you were to do the survey again, you would want to make sure that responses weren't going to vary by more than 5%. So what we have is a confidence interval that really gives us an assurance that if we did that survey again with another 1,000 people, responses might only change by 5%. So a sample of 1,000 gives us enough for our Australian population of 25 million people. It's an amazing thing that such a small sample, it sounds small, but 1,000 people is a robust approach, and that's what we use, whether we're doing projects for media, for our clients. It does tailor towards the different audience, but when you're trying to understand the Australian population, that's a great insight using 1,000 people. And so we collect that using one of our online panels, and then we design the survey, put it into field, collect the results, analyze it, and spend a bit of time writing up the report and designing it so that people can get some nice, clear insights. So encourage people to check out that report online.
Yeah. So how would people, like these panels, are people able to sign up for those, or how would they get in touch if they wanted to do that?
Yeah, there's a couple of panels in Australia that are, there's lots of different ones people can join. So we've collected this research using a panel called SINT. And so SINT is an online panel where they have different databases people can sign up to. So it's an opt-in approach, a double opt-in where people need to register and then they can get points benefits for taking some surveys. So if people don't have too much survey fatigue, getting those weekly in their inbox and want to do a little bit more, they love collecting and helping people gather data. That's one of the things people can do.
Cool.
From this data, how can pastors utilise the data that you collect and use it to help their ministry and their church?
Yeah, great question, Karen. I think the point of collecting information is so that people can have insight. We don't want to just create more information overload for people and stress people out. But I think by having an understanding of what are the trends that we are facing, it allows people to inform their communication strategies. So understanding some of the emotions and some of the behaviours that people are feeling and what they're doing and thinking, it allows people to shape whether it's that weekly email out or doing a little video to people, even the messages that leaders might be sharing their weekly sermons. That could be something you can tailor in towards some of these commonly felt emotions or the type of leaders that they're looking for at the moment. We know that the message of the gospel is something that isn't changing, but how we deliver that, we want to really suit the time that we're in. And I think one of the things I've really enjoyed having studied the Bible for many years is that we talk about bringing heaven to earth. And the situations on earth, we live in a rapidly changing environment. And so heaven looks like for today might be different to yesterday. We're in a pretty unprecedented era. And so we want to equip leaders and appreciate what you do here to equip leaders with the latest trends. And the point of, I guess, having an understanding of doing research and looking at insights is so that people can plan and think ahead and help equip people for service in these times as well. So many leaders are trying to probably activate their church members, even though it's a stay-at-home era. People still have gifts and have opportunities to use those. So there's a real, I think, opportunity to know the time and then shape the trends.
So what kind of organisations have you worked with?
Great question. We've been able to work with a range of businesses through to not-for-profits. We do at McCrindle a lot of studies just around what are the latest sort of social and pop culture issues. We did a study a number of years ago for an ice cream brand that wanted to understand, do people actually like staying in? And so a little while ago, Mark used the phrase that we're not just socialising, but there's a few people socialising. And it was this people not wanting to go out and engage in activities. And so there was this term at the time, FOMO, you're probably familiar with, the fear of missing out. But one of the things we did a study on was around the joy of missing out, where some people actually like staying at home. And in this era of self-isolation, I think we've seen a few of those people who are happily boasting that they're at home, maybe with their pets or family, or just with those books and podcasts and just able to soak up the time on their own. We know there are some people who just want to enjoy that space. They don't necessarily love getting out. And those, I guess, companies we get to work with, they really range from small new startups through to some of the largest established companies here in Australia and globally as well. A lot of companies that want to do market research on the Australian community. That's one of the real passion areas, is to understand how Australians live and work and learn, what we shop, what we think, what we like to say, what we spend our money on. So we've been doing lots of studies over the years, and it's always fascinating coming into work and hearing about the impacts of what we get to do. It's a real pleasure. And I think the key purpose at McCrindle we really galvanise around is that we want to empower human flourishing. We're really here to help make a positive impact for billions of people. We know that in Australia we're up to 25 million Australians, but globally, we are in a global era where 3 in 10 Australians are actually born overseas at the moment. So we do live in a globally connected society at the moment, and you can feel it when a global pandemic hits and people are physically cut off from family, and yet the connections and concerns for family members from across Asia through to the UK, through to across Europe, the US, where Australia's experiencing that migration growth from. It's a really interesting time where people really want to know how are we going, not just here in Australia, but internationally as well.
That's great. I am one of those people who do like staying home. Truth comes out. No.
My wife said to me, "Has anything changed for you? Like you just live in the man cave out the back in your office, and isolation was just a matter of acknowledging everyone else had to stay home too."
But I do miss my travelling. But no. And as I work with a lot of pastors and leaders, and as you were bringing out those stats, I was thinking also social media managers. A lot of churches have social media managers who could use this relevant information for their posting on behalf of their churches and ministries across Australia. So I think that would be a great tool.
Yeah, there's, I think, a real opportunity at the moment in a digital era where people do spend, and it was back in 1997 actually when we started spending more time in online interactions than in face-to-face interactions. So this isn't necessarily a new trend that we spend a lot of time online, but we are, without those other social interactions, spending even more time now online. And so for churches, for Christian ministries, I think this opportunity to engage and build connections with people using those different social media platforms that suit their segments. We've seen TikTok is one of the new apps that's really taken off for young people, and a lot of parents probably learning about the TikTok moves and dances at the moment, but also knowing who you're trying to connect with and communicate with, making sure you pick the right app, the right platform, and have the right messaging for those audiences you're trying to engage. It's so important. So it's a real era of social media, and we're talking now with the youngest generation, Generation Alpha, who've been born since 2010. That was the year the iPad came out. These are a generation real digital natives. They've grown up learning to swipe, touch the glass, whereas I'm a Gen Y, and I got told, keep your fingers off the glass, Jeff. Don't leave any off the glass.
Glass? With Gen X. No, it's quite interesting because, like, even with Generation Alpha now, like Facebook's come out with Facebook Kids with their chat, the Kids Messenger and things like that. So it's interesting to see how that'll get used. And we were talking to Dave Wakely from Hillsong Kids about that, and like, is that something you've even thought about? And he goes, no, it's too new to even know how to use that in ministry, you know. So
and we've seen with home with parents doing their education for their children at home that there's been that adaptability for not just the kids, but the parents have learned it as well, learning how to use the Zoom technologies, learning how to use the online apps and platforms to do lessons, to learn at home. And I think a lot of churches are also realizing there's opportunities there where people can connect. It's a different experience. It's not the same as meeting up face-to-face for a gathering program or Sunday service or weekend ministry, but there are opportunities and possibly some advantages that have been really brought forward. And I think some of where churches have been able to innovate over these last few months has been in that creating opportunities for people to connect virtually. And we are in a global era where people know people who live all across the planet. And so maybe many pastors are actually able to say, hey, we've now got a global reach with our service instead of having one physical location.
Yes.
We've now probably seen that global opportunity. And I think a lot of leaders are probably weighing up the decisions now. Do we continue doing something?
Yes, that's right.
What's the streamlined strategic approach to doing that? We know that local churches have a local focus. but we are in a global era, and it's a digital era where 97% of our young people in Australia have a smartphone. So there is an opportunity to connect a lot of our emerging generations in this virtual era.
Yeah, some of the churches I've been talking to, because especially in the technology space, people are like, we've been using church online, but we need something that we can take back to the real world once we go back to church. And it's like, because at the moment you can chat and you can ask the pastor questions and all sorts of things real time, but when you go back to church, can you do that at church? Like, can people sit in the congregation and message one of the key pastors at the front, like, or something like that? People are asking these questions going, well, how is what we're doing now that we're enjoying going to fit back into church, or are you going to turn it off and take us backwards? or not? Some people don't see it backwards. Some people see it as a good thing to not have it, as a distraction as well.
That engagement in services is a really interesting thing. In an online experience, having the chat function has been, I think, a crucial thing to have some way of communicating with people. It might be a live stream or a pre-record. I know a lot of churches doing it in plenty of different ways, different platforms that people have been able to use. But when we re-emerge on this recovery road, what does an engaged service look like? Are we new trends where there's live polling, live chats in our real physical buildings even, where people want to have that interactivity? And the online pastor might be a new trend that we see, where churches are saying, yep, we've got the resources, or we're prepared to invest resources.
Yes.
A space where people can connect online. And it's interesting seeing the attitudes in the COVID study that we did. 78% of Australians thought that when it comes to working from home, there'd be a real change in that space. So people have an appetite and anticipation that they may not have to go out for every meeting they've been going out to for work. I expect there'll be something that transitions for worship and ministries as well, where people say, hey, do we need to come together for a physical meeting? Could we do it as a virtual meeting? Is that ministry, does it need to be online? Could that training go virtual? So really, I think there'll be opportunities for people to innovate and really save time and improve that livability. And I think in Australia, we are the land of the long weekend. We do want to enjoy our time with our loved ones, our hobbies. Yeah. We want to go out and enjoy the great outdoors as soon as we can once restrictions are lifting. And so to be able to free up time, and that, I think, speaks to the busy culture, that time poor culture that Australians really resonate with, and probably have taken a deep breath over these last few months and enjoyed a bit of stillness and solitude. It doesn't have to be a lonely experience, but it also is, I think, interesting. What will people be prepared to re-engage with as we go forward? And commitments, we do live in a bit of an era where people will prefer to have engagement rather than commitment. And that's going to be a challenge, I think, for church leaders to say, how do you continue to buy that, get that buy-in for your vision, for your mission? So really outlining that strategic approach is going to be crucial, where you're understanding people's commitment levels, the ways that they want to buy in and receive communication. There'll be a few points, I think, that really can help leaders. And we know with communicating that we often use the 4 R's for communication. Firstly, it needs to be real. It needs to have a authenticity and openness to it. It needs to be responsive. It needs to be up to date with the latest news and regulations. And it also needs to be relevant. It needs to be speaking the right message to the right audience. And I think the 4th one is that it needs to be relational. Really about, I think, as social researchers in the era of self-isolation, that relational connection and advantage and benefit that the Christian community has is such a key point, and one of those real it's one of those sore points at the moment, that people are feeling that sense of loss and grief, missing that regular, not just weekly, but multiple contact points through a week, whether it's the team they serve on, the ministry they're involved with. So to really, I think, highlight those advantages of community and the benefits of relational communication are going to be crucial to go forwards.
Talking to that, in before, pre-COVID, we used to look at, especially in churches, we'd have our analytical dashboards, and they'll all be all about quantities. And right now, a lot of pastors that I'm talking to are now talking about quality. All right, how can we give quality connection? How can we quality engagement? Have you got any advice in that direction?
I think the ways we're encouraging people at the moment, it's really around making sure that engagement happens. And there's probably a few tips around, we have what we call the engagement equation, which is around making sure people understand your culture. So it's we call this the CPI equation. It's about culture, firstly, it's about purpose, and then it's about impact. with culture, it's really about understanding that each organisation, each ministry, each church, each community will have their own way of doing things and their own values that they celebrate, and understanding that that is what is sort of built in, and it's the DNA. It's something that can't be changed. And I think we'll see organisations thrive when they are real with their culture. So understanding culture is going to be crucial to engagement. Secondly, it's about purpose. And just, I think in an era where everything has been sort of upheaved and people are still probably looking for what is actually certain in this new world of uncertainty, to reinforce what are our purposes as a Christian, as an organisation. What are those, not just short-term, but also those long-term goals that organisations are heading towards, and what's the purpose behind that? And there's a great YouTube TED Talk by Simon Sinek, Start With Why, and that's really where the purpose question, I think, helps people get motivated. Once we talk about a reason for doing something, we're reminded that there is value in doing it. And the way we do it ties back to the culture, but the reason for doing what we do day in, day out, our personal spirituality, our gathered connections, those corporate events, they all tie back to that purpose. And thirdly, the I is about having impacts. And as we celebrate those impacts, that's where we know that engagement rises. When people know they're on the winning team and that they're seeing the celebration of wins, and they can be small wins. I think that's one of the key things at the moment that many leaders are probably feeling like, my original dashboard of quantitative measures are hard to track at the moment and may not be having much progress, but to find what are those wins that you can celebrate. And that needs to tie back to the culture, needs to tie back to the purpose, and making sure that you're having those impacts that align with the organisation's values. So I think that CPI can be something that people find really useful, just to think through, how do we share our culture in this experience, in this moment? How do we outline and re-articulate, recast that vision and that purpose, as well as celebrate, and how do you promote those champions? I know that the Christian faith is often full of hidden heroes, people who might be having goals being achieved, and we just need to celebrate those people.
Yep. Good points. I love them. I'm scribbling down notes while you're talking. I want to talk about City in Field. I've had a brief look at the website, and it's available for church pastors and leaders to use. Can you explain the purpose of the website, Geoff?
Yeah, we've created at McCrindle a website and a community essentially for leaders who are in Christian organisations who want to know the latest trends and who want to keep up to date with our latest insights. And so City in Field is a new website we've launched, and we've got on there a couple of studies at the moment, which are really around those national trends. So if you're leading at a local level, or maybe you're raising, coaching or mentoring up other young leaders as well, this just begins to give a bit of benchmarking opportunity where people can see, well, how does our church sort of align with some of those national trends? And so we've got on there a national faith and belief study, which people can grab for free, as well as a faith and giving study with an infographic and an animated video. There's a report as well. And so that latest faith and belief study is faith and giving study, is a really interesting study around how do Australian churchgoers give. And this was done pre-COVID, so we've got a great data set now that we'll be able to track over time. And that's one of the real interesting things, I guess, working in research, is that the world's always changing. And people understand that that's technologically, it's socially, it's demographically. In the church at the moment, we've got an ageing population. We've got a younger group of people who are increasingly digitally oriented and living in that sort of screen-focused approach to life. And so what does it mean when you've got a physical weekly meeting that's shifted online for a moment? What's that road forwards look like? For each organisation, it's going to be different. And how does giving work now that we've kind of gone from maybe passing around the cup, the offering bag every week, now it maybe is more online without that cashless part of our society? There's a lot of trends that are going to be really different over time. But one of the interesting things I think that we found in that latest study for faith and giving was that churchgoers worry about finances because the future is uncertain. That was the top response in a pre-COVID world. And so tying into uncertainty and being able to, I think, align those offering messages, helping equip people for uncertain times is one of those things. As biblical, godly leaders, people have an opportunity to teach into what does the scripture say about how to actually manage your finance well for an unknown future. And here we are right in the middle of a global health pandemic with economic impacts. these resources, I think, can really help guide people as they jump in and grab those latest insights.
Yeah, that is a great message, because a lot of pastors have been, it's a interesting time for them with the giving side and knowing how to tackle that. And so I'd encourage anyone to go to City and Field and check out the resources there, and it will encourage pastors and leaders and give them a bit of a guideline of what's happening. And anyone can sign up with that. That's right, isn't it, Geoff? With City and Field, it's not yet. No, that's great.
Hey, so with the resources there, Geoff, how often and what sort of resources are we likely to see there, like in the next 3 to 6 months, so to say?
Yeah, that's a good question. So later in this year, we'll be doing another study that will launch through City and Field. So if people are happy to drop in their email address, and when they download one of those reports, we'll be announcing as those new research projects are released. And so we do an annual study in this space is the approach. So we've done the Faith and Belief one back in 2017. We had City and Field, which kicked off last year in 2019 though. So this was a new initiative last year. And so in 2020, we'll be doing a new bit of research. And we've often done events as well with the National Church Life Survey, with Dr. Ruth Powell and the team at NCLS Research. Sam Sterland is a fantastic group of leaders there that we love sharing insights together and helping equip Christian leaders. We're probably very thankful for NCLS's long-term commitment to collecting information. They've got one of the world's largest church samples. And it's incredible that here in Australia, with just 25 million people, we've got one of the best data sets on church life in the world. So there's a lot of insights that we can gather from them, but we also want to collect our own insights to equip church leaders and help Christian organisations as well who want to get ahead of the curve and be able to respond. So if people just drop in their email there, they'll get that latest report, the latest infographic. And then when at McCrindle, if we ever do any new blogs around the emerging generations, we've got a couple of reports at the moment around Gen Alpha and the response to COVID. So there's other links that we can send out, and we send out about an email. It's only about once every 3 months. It's not you're not going to get your inbox churned full of emails from us at City and Field. We're just sending out high quality throughout the year so that people can stay in touch and keep equipping people on this journey.
Yeah, I saw on the website there, also on that City and Field, you're looking for organisations if they're willing to partner with you guys. Like, can you talk to that a bit?
Yeah, that's right. And that's where we've got an event that we usually do every year to help gather Christian leaders who want to get the latest trends. And so we've had last year Mark McCrindle present with Dr. Ruth Powell at a church and community summit. And so we were open for people who wanted to support and sponsor that event. We had the Faith and Giving infographic, which was supported by Christian Super and Baptist Financial Services. So some really respectable, enormous brands here that are wanting to equip church leaders with the latest trends. So this year coming around again, we'll be contacting a few organisations. If people wanted to get in touch, if they want to support the research or even just be a digital supporter and get that sort of brand recognition as we approach a growing list of people who are Christian leaders, that's where we've really been delighted to share those trends. It's not something we want to gather data and hold it in. We want to set it free and equip and empower people. So we often talk about 4 E's when it comes to sharing information. It's about equipping people and trusting they'll use it well. We want to encourage them. We want to motivate and support people and cheer them on. And the final E is to actually empower them. And that's about using it well. So making sure that people have that courage to lead boldly. These are challenging times in an increasingly secular environment. We still do have 1 in 2 Australians who identifies as a Christian, but we have seen that rapid rise in the no religious response in the census, up to over 30% in the 2016. Now that would be great to see. It may be even further increase in 2021 census. So just another 18 months or so till we have those results. It'll be a little while to go. Yeah. Forward to that new census next year.
Should be interesting. Should I say the political debate around that? So about those numbers and seeing what they really mean and fleshing them out. Yeah, I think it'll take a few censuses to really understand what that group even is. So.
Yeah, that's right. And there is, I think, Simon Smart said this at one of our events a little while ago. He said in Australia there's a thin layer of antagonism,
Yep.
Australia, on a sea of apathy.
Yeah, that's it.
I think it's a brilliant description of the Australian response to faith, that there is a small portion who are very antagonistic and vocal and outspoken. And I think that challenge is that it might look like a lot of people are like that. Whereas I think the everyday Aussie who's not a believer, or who may even be more a cultural Christian, just due to ancestry, they may affiliate with Christianity, but not be practicing either in personal devotion or at public gatherings. That apathy, I think, is probably one of the challenges. And I think there's opportunity at the moment for people to engage with people who might be in that space at the moment, while they're asking the big questions. While life's a little bit slower, they might be looking and thinking, what is the meaning of life? And as a young guy, I was 7 years old and walking home from school one day, and I got actually run over by a car and dragged down the road. It was a pretty traumatic experience as a little young kid. I'm thankful to be alive, to be honest. I didn't even have a phone, and very thankful for that grace on my life. And it really made me ask the big questions of, why am I here? What is my purpose? And what would have happened if I died? And those have been a part of my journey. And I think in a health pandemic, we're dealing with some health concerns as people are vulnerable. We're dealing with some emotional and economic impacts as people are feeling uncertain and pretty anxious around, will we have enough food to get through? These times are pretty challenging, and yet people are looking for, I think, that even more hidden support, something that can hold them up in these challenging times when most things are pushing them down. What is it that keeps people getting out of bed? And that emotional and resilience, I think, is something that Christianity has a lot to offer. The hope that we have.
Yes.
That's it. Yeah, it's quite interesting. There's I mean, you've got the two sides. Like one of the things I was hearing, there was groups of people getting on gaming platforms and just talking about God amongst gaming, which is very rare. It's usually, that demographic's usually pushed towards the atheist, anti-religion type group. But there've been some groups have been very successful in just playing games and just chatting about life, and then introducing God concepts into those conversations as well. And then on the other side of the fence, one of the men's groups up in Brisbane had about 500 men come to the group. 80% of them didn't go to church. They just go and do a fishing group, and they talk about God in the fishing group, but they don't go to church services per se. So you've got, I guess there's opportunities all around church to do some unique things as well.
Yeah, connecting them through their interests, through an interest, is a great tool to use for evangelism and outreaching.
And I think being able to understand the connection points, while we can't physically meet, people still do have those social interests, those hobbies that they're practicing. And it might be chatting with a neighbour, or chatting in an online group, or the family members who align around those similar hobbies. It's about finding those connection points. And I think we've used a little framework in helping guide people who want to be effective in engaging their communities. And one of the first steps is to actually look into your community and see who it is that's around you, and what are those age groups, those demographics, those cultural groups. We mentioned earlier that 3 in 10 Australians were born overseas. But which countries were those people born from?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Area? It might be different in one suburb to the next. And so looking into your area will help you see who's there. Then we talk about listening is the second L. I've got 5 L's here, so I'll just share these quickly. The second L is to listen to your community. And I think often we want to start an outreach approach by saying something. But I think often we can take some time before sharing something just to hear what people are up to. What are they thinking? What are their fears and concerns? We know at the moment there's a lot of different anxieties around health and finance. But what else is on people's hearts? So listening well, and that could be doing surveys, or it could just be chatting one-on-one. Could be with over the fence conversation with the neighbour, or it could be having a chat in an online experience where it's a gaming platform, or learn how to make sourdough. As well. I probably imagine there's a few of those workshops happening online as well. So as people look and then listen, it's about learning about your community is the third L. So taking some time to maybe do a bit of looking and seeing it. Has the local council put out anything about your local area? There might be some reports around your geographic area in your little part of the world. There might already be some high quality work that's done that you can draw on. And there might be future population projections, for example, that say, hey, we're going to see a boom in a younger or older population, or more in the family space, the housing type.
Yep.
Australia at the moment's got 10 million households, but over the next 3 decades, Australia is going to grow from 25 million, heading up to almost 50 million. So we're heading by 2048, we'll be at 40 million people, and we're growing at the moment by almost the size of the population of Canberra every year. So as our population grows, what will that new cultural and household type be? It's going to be fascinating, and every area will be different. So encourage people to learn about that area.
Bordertown might be a suburb by then, Karen.
A suburb of what? Melbourne or Adelaide? Who's going to get here first?
Or Melbourne.
I think people are historically moving in those urbanisation trends to live in our cities, and yet with this new work from home era, I think there'll be an opportunity for regional activation where people can do their job from a different area. They don't need to be in the hustle and bustle of a big city that's expensive, that's congested. There might be some lifestyle benefits in a city, but I know there's a lot of beautiful amenity and lifestyle in our regional and cultural areas as well. So something I think that we'll see an interesting rebalance in that space over the coming months and years.
It's interesting you said look, because I was at Spotlight the other day just picking up a frame, and the place was packed. Like, I've never seen it so busy ever. Like, and I'm thinking everyone's just inside and they're looking at their house and they're looking around and they're going, oh, got to do that, got to do that. And everyone's gone down to Spotlight. It's just, and I'm sitting there going, this is an opportunity too, potentially in a couple of months when everyone hasn't finished their projects, for the church to maybe say, hey, let's do a craft day or let's do a renovation day and get involved with people, I guess.
Yeah, helping people, I think, access those hobbies, as well as, like you say, what are those projects that people are really passionate to do at the moment, whether it's the updating the house or decluttering at the moment has been one of those interesting.
Yeah, that's it.
I've heard a few people, and mostly guys, interestingly, who've said, oh, I've been in the shed and tidied it up. So I have to say I've done that as well. It's one of those things of, as we've got a bit of extra time, how do we use it? What actually matters, and are the possessions that we have bringing us the value that we think when we purchase them? Then we can be a bit consumed in our Australian Western culture with possessions and a status and appearance, and yet what actually brings significance and meaning? Often those relational connections, those passions, those hobbies that you talk about, it's the creating. It's about working, and whether it's paid work or not, but doing things well with meaning is so important in this Australian, I guess, era where we've got an opportunity as a nation to be a leader in a global era, as a country that's handled COVID so far very well. How do we now build our economy? How do we build our communities? How do we create those safe and prosperous places for people to live and to work? How do we create those communities where people are safe and yet have a chance to connect and get those social benefits? Every local church leader, I think, at the moment has an opportunity to help foster that community, not only for their members, but more broadly in the community, whether that's the young mums looking to reconnect and find a suitable, safe place, whether it's for some of the older population who are maybe still feeling a bit vulnerable, but want to begin to find that appropriate gathering place. Church leaders have a lot to offer in this time.
So did we get to the end of the L's?
We got to 3. So they're the first 3, which are about understanding your community. So it was look, listen and learn. I appreciate you remember we were halfway through it with the good words in the middle. I got distracted.
I thought there'd be some people out there that are like, there's 2 more, there's 2 more.
Thanks, Chris.
So you don't need to comment below. We'll get to them.
We've talked about the first 3, which is about understanding the community you might be living in. And what we know that understanding is one thing, but to engage your community effectively, you can't just sit and read reports or just listen to people. We need to have an opportunity to connect and engage effectively. And so the 4th L is about learning to love your community. And this is really about understanding through those first 3 moments of the journey, well, what are those needs or hurts or dreams where you can come along and support your community? What are those aspirations that are on people's hearts, or what are the issues that are blocking people from having a healthy, flourishing community in their local area? I think as people think and begin to do some of the hard work around building community, it does take love. This isn't an easy approach. We're outlining today. Love is a sacrificial journey to put someone else's life ahead of your own. But to love people is I think, the 4th step. But the point is, we actually want to lead people to seeing that heavenly experience where people have a taste of something far greater than what they ever thought was possible. And so the fifth one is about leading people. And that's not just leading a person, but I think as a Christian myself, being a leader in our city is something that we've been called to be the light on a hill. We've got an opportunity to cast a vision of what our city could look like. And so to lead at this time is about having vision. It is about having a plan and a safe and strategic pathway forwards. I think as leaders, there's so many questions. It's great to chat and ask those appropriately, but we do also need to make decisions. We do need to be bold and take, I think, a response to a challenge. And one of my favourite quotes around problems is that a problem is just an opportunity in disguise.
Yes.
It's dressed up and looks different to what you probably expect the opportunity to look like. But often when an opportunity walks in the door and says it's an opportunity, probably too good to be true. So
And the other thing I was always taught is like luck is when preparation meets that opportunity. So I guess as a ministry or a church, if you're in a position already to help someone when that opportunity comes, you can jump on it.
And I think the realistic approach is it's not to try and do every idea that you might come up with when you're vision casting, you're getting away, you're hearing some ideas. Doesn't mean you need to implement every one of those. So taking the time to build the resources, gather and galvanize a team around that to support you, and then respond strategically so that you're doing something for a period of time. Let's test it, assess it, come back around again if it's going to continue working with momentum. I think that's one of the key things as we go forwards, that leaders don't need to feel overwhelmed, but they can take an opportunity and advance their purpose in this time.
So, talking about the tools that pastors, what are some of the tools around other than McCrindle, or whether you've got them, that pastors can use to even find like local demographic information or just information about their community?
Great. Yeah, there's probably two places I'd recommend every leader checks out. And one is their local government council's website, and just have a look around and even just shoot an email through if they've got an inquiry sort of contact form and just say, hey, I'd like to know more about our council area. Can you send me any reports, particularly around the people and the community? A lot of councils might already have done research, or they might have a subscription to some data that tells their council's demographics. And so going direct to the council is one place. You can also go straight to the ABS website. There's a part on there called Quick Stats under the Census tab. If that's of interest, grab my email address. I'll share that. It's geoff@mccrindle.com.au. You can pop that in the notes, I'm sure. The point is that there's a website where you can look up what is the cultural mix in your area, what is the age profile, what are the types of households in your area, so that you can begin to look into those areas. Now, the friends we have over at NCLS Research, they've got some tools as well that help do some mapping around that. They've created a free tool as well. So getting in touch with Sam Sterling from NCLS Research, he's been a great friend and connection in this space as well. They've got some great resources as well. So I think learning about your community is something that doesn't need to be too overwhelming, although people probably don't want to spend hours searching around on the ABS website, but just a few moments finding the right report begins to give people some clarity. Confusing if you end up in the wrong space, so please reach out if you need some help there to find your area, your local government area. That's probably where I'd start. And it's really just about beginning to understand the community. And then I think it's probably encouraging people to chat with their peers, chat with people like yourselves who are leading with the data, not just using a hunch, using an intuition. One of the voices at the table needs to be data. And so making sure that people rely on a community of leaders. So making sure they chat with people as they get that vision and begin to build it out. They need to process that with people and chat, have those collaboration discussions. So getting a coffee when we can, whether it's a virtual coffee at the moment, but having those meetups to talk about their city, their area, so that people can brainstorm and process those ideas that are so important.
That sounds like a great idea.
No, that's good. Great information, especially when wanting to do things within the community, and when everything gets back to where we can meet again and do outreaches and even something that we can relate to those migrants or people who have come from other countries into our district, and something that we could run as a program in a church, that we can meet them at their interest level.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And
No, that's good.
that's a great opportunity to do something that's personalised to each area. I know that there's a lot of fantastic programs out there that work sort of at any location. And I would encourage people to take one of those programs, but just adapt it to their local cultural group or the age group that they've got sort of some strengths in their area. It might be strengths in their team. Maybe they've got a really good digital capacity in their church, or maybe they've kind of got the resource, the volunteers, the people, but need some guidance in just getting that program up and running in a new space. So keep reaching out. You've got some great people here with Karen and Chris who are doing some great work in supporting. So you're not alone is probably my encouragement today, that always reach out. There's some great people who are going to help people on this journey.
Cool.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Geoff, for your time today. And I could sit here and listen to more information. And I know your job would be never ending, because there's always something to research, and you've got so much that we can glean from. So thank you so much to you and to the McCrindle team for all that you do for us and for everyone in Australia. On behalf of them, I just want to thank you and everyone at McCrindle for all the resources that you provide for us to make our job much easier.
Absolutely privileged to be here and to be able to share today. Thank you for having me, and thanks to all your listeners for tuning in. If people want to get more resource and want to get in touch, I'm always happy to chat. But you guys are doing a fantastic job. It's been such a pleasure to come on the journey with you today and to share a few trends and stats. I hope people have had a few coffees while they've been listening to keep up with all those stats. It's plenty of information, but I hope it gives people some insight so they can make some decisions, as we are in a pretty uncertain period right now. And people are looking to go, what is the right approach? What are the right steps going forwards? And how do I bring my team, our church, our members with us? Yep. It's a chance, I think, to really cast vision as we re-emerge from this period, and just come back to that CPI, that we need to explore and engage people with our culture, with our purpose, and celebrate the impacts. And there's been plenty of great impacts over these last few months, but I think our best days are ahead of us. I'm a bit of an optimist when it comes to the future, and look forward to seeing how people integrate these trends and make some strategic choices going forwards.
Exactly. Thank you so much. And we'll share all your resource links and websites in the comments or in the post description.
Yep.
But thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much. Lovely to be here.
All right, bye for now.
See you, everyone.